Hi, Dave Rayum. I am the Director of State and Local Government and Higher Education, or SLED, Sales at Atlassian.
Hi, I'm Brandon Hauk.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Here at Kerasoft headquarters in Reston. My name is Anuj Sachdeva. I'm the Chief Executive Officer at Clovity. We're an Atlassian Platinum Solutions partner. Glad to be here with Dave and with Brandon. And today we're actually covering, as you can see, Dave comes from the SLED background. So the intent of the conversation is going to flow towards how state, local, and education are looking overall that this whole might move to cloud or move to Atlassian Gov Cloud. I'll start off with Dave. Dave, sort of your spectrum is very large. State, local, and education. How is seeing the customers looking at this transition, whether a customer who's currently on data center and exploring potentially cloud or AGC, or for that matter, the customer on our competitive products, how are they looking at which segment to go choose cloud versus AGC?
Yeah, I kind of put it into three buckets, right? There's data center, there's cloud, and then there's government cloud. There's kind of three buckets. We have a changing point in time where everybody's cloud focused. It's the cool thing to do, right? And so, with the move to cloud comes a lot of benefits. A lot of the technology vendors are starting to inject, lots of different componentry to their tech stack, and specifically in cloud versus their data center products. So I'd say the same thing's true for us. And we see a lot of customers, looking to take advantage or capture some of those benefits that are offered in our cloud versus on our data center products. So I'd say, it kind of starts with solutioning, right? What's correct and what's best for the customer. So for state and local government customers, for education customers, kind of understanding what's important to them first as the starting point. And then, of course, we solution based on their needs. But more often than not, cloud is meeting all the needs and more. When you talk about the whole AI revolution, which is the buzzword now, it is built and baked into our cloud solution set. And I'm sure a lot of other vendors are doing the same and following suit. So those are kind of just some key trends that we're seeing there. When it comes down to state and local government in particular, of course, there are states, there's, depending on what terminology you use, there's state ramp, there's gov ramp. Some states participate in that, some don't. Some have their own set of compliance and certifications that they're aiming for. As an example, there's Texas with TexRamp. So lots of different avenues our customers are kind of taking with respect to the security compliance behind it. But net is, when you talk about data center, when you talk about cloud, those paths are there. If you need to be more buttoned up from a security compliance perspective, there are government cloud options. So in our case, we call it Atlassian Government Cloud, or AGC. And so we see a lot of customers there that are more security minded and focused with that product set. So
I have so many things to add to this, but let me actually switch to Brendan here. Brendan, you only joined Atlassian 6 months back, and again, I'm sure it's part of the journey towards cloud. Given there's a huge acceleration. I just noticed Atlassian had one of the best quarters, $1 billion on cloud, which is amazing. Congrats, both of you. But how is, in your function, Atlassian plus AWS, how does it add value to somebody like us as a partner solutions person, and in Dave's capacity as sort of the SLED lead?
Yeah, definitely. Great question. So I guess a little background. Before I joined Atlassian, I spent 7.5 years over at AWS working in public sector across our partner base, right? So that was everything from ISVs to systems integrators and ensuring our mutual customers were successful. And I think that's where the tightest synergy in the 6 months that I've been here thus far is Atlassian has a massive customer base, right? And so does AWS. And AWS has been working for 2 decades, migrating customers over to the cloud. So Atlassian, with our product suite, we're on that journey right now. So having that tight relationship of their expertise and ensuring customers are successful with that move ultimately benefits our partners, right? But being able to tap into that expertise. But at the end of the day, and almost most importantly, the customers themselves that will be utilizing that product set, right? So Dave touched on security, determining whether or not the customer needs to be in our commercial big product or our FedRAMP moderate AGC product, right? Those are the type of conversations that we can have with AWS that have been migrating customers over to the cloud for, multiple decades. And, we encountered this quite often at AWS, in that everyone thought that they needed to be in the Gov Cloud regions because they were a government entity, right? And they pay a premium for being in that space. And ultimately, they didn't need to be in that space, right? So, making sure the customer is successful, both from a technical standpoint, but also from an economic standpoint, because you want to secure that relationship long term, right? And ensure they have, extra resources to accomplish their ultimate objectives and their missions that are important to all of us as citizens.
Yeah. So I have a follow-up question. Like, we work with Dave and his team very closely, right? And let's say we are going after an education customer, or for that matter, a state customer. At what point we should approach you? Let's say if the customer is at a point that they're trying to decide OPEX versus CAPEX, and they're currently on data center or on our competitive products. Should we come to you to help us, like from an AWS Atlassian perspective? Is there sort of a role which AWS is playing in that as well?
Definitely. I mean, it's never too early or often to engage. I would actually defer to as early as possible in those conversations, right? Because you could, save the customer and yourselves a lot of time and effort, especially if they've already created some sort of internal expert / champion within that agency, right? So like if you're communicating with someone else that has CapEx or OpEx concerns, and they're not fully grasping, right, the benefits and or the challenges associated and trade-offs with both, and AWS has already had those conversations with stakeholders at that agency, like, we need to get Dave in there with the customer. Like, we discussed this, 5 years ago when they were closing down this data center and moving it over to cloud. He deeply understands this subject now. And that's the power of the co-selling relationship in a nutshell.
And I think one thing I've also learned in my process of working with sort of you and Dave, if a typical case study is that if a customer is on a data center and they're on premise and no correlation to AWS and is looking to move to cloud, we could come to you to ask for some credits as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that in that scenario that you just laid out there, it would really be the funding mechanisms that AWS would have to offer. And that's what I would encourage any Atlassian partner to not have, like a binary relationship with Atlassian and or AWS, like exclusivity in that regard, right? Like, the power comes into play when we're working together mutually, and that it also pertains to the funding mechanisms themselves, because AWS does have programs, and all public information. It's migration acceleration programs, workload migration programs, and that's really to fund workloads that are moving from on-premise over to AWS or a competitive cloud hyperscaler over to AWS, right?
Very nice.
So that's not necessarily an Atlassian action, but something that we can certainly, and in myself and my capacity, help coordinate across AWS.
That's great, actually, Dave, right? Because what we could do is, if you're seeing a customer who's moving from a competitor product, that's net new business for Atlassian and net new business for sort of AWS if they're on-prem or whatever it is. And that's where we start to approach Brendan, actually, to see if there is some fund mechanism or helping the customer, actually. But I wanted to go back on the previous thing which you were saying. So there's cloud, but then I also see, obviously, there is cloud commercial and cloud enterprise, and then AGC, obviously, Atlassian Government Cloud is enterprise. But how do you perceive, like, especially in, again, state, local, where do they, if the customer has decided to go to cloud, how do they differentiate whether it should be cloud commercial versus cloud premium versus cloud enterprise? What's the clear demarcation there, or how do we make sure the customer understands the demarcation?
Yeah, I'd say much to Brendan's point is engage early and often. And so Atlassian, the team and I are great partners. We're here and we're here to help, right? Especially the SLED community. And so engage early and often. Lots of times, historically, Atlassian was a product and engineering led company. they didn't really have a forward-facing go-to-market. And so now we're really turning the tides and providing more of that concerted effort on getting out there and networking with our customers and making sure that they know we've got the ability to better help them with their challenges and solutions. And so the goal is engage early and often. The team and I are great partners. We're going to be able to help come up with the most ideal solution based on the challenges that we're hearing that they're faced with, right? When it comes down to the difference between premium and enterprise, I don't want to sugarcoat it, but the enterprise is very highly desired from our customer base. There's robust analytics, based upon your solution set, your Atlassian solution set, Jira, Confluence, Jira Service Management. We're really leaning into. There's so many people that work in those tools daily and put data in those tools. And the way that the industry's headed, it's AI is everything, right? So we couple it all with AI. We have numerous different sites as part of the enterprise plan. There's robust data analytics and reporting that you can get and pull insights from that data that resides in the systems. So that's a big piece of it, right? That they all decide on that for. There's more to it, but at a high level, that's it.
And so So I'll tell you a quick case study here. We've been working with the California entity, right? I mean, that's kind of how we partner with your team, where we they were actually a net new customer. They were evaluating moving literally off sort of Excel sheets, let's just say. Right, and that's kind of where we sat down with them. We did an assessment and partnered with the some of the AEs as well as the solution teams, actually, and then hashed out, okay, what is their roadmap? Eventually, they decided to move to Cloud Premium only because the intent was to start small, crawl before you can walk, and then they said they will eventually move to actually to Enterprise. And actually, we're now migrating them to Enterprise, and they just in fact are going for an upgrade as well as part of that.
Yeah.
So exactly. I totally echo the same thought. And Brendan, let me sort of switch gears from if as a partner or even as a sort of an end customer, what are the vehicles? I know there's lately I heard about Carahsoft getting onto the marketplace. What are the vehicles of choices the customer has or partner has if they're talking either to the customer or customers talking to you guys as directly as Atlassian?
Yeah. Are you referring to procurement vehicles themselves?
No, like you
or just engagement vehicles. Got it. Right now, like on the AWS side, they have the AWS Partner Network, right? APN. Free to join. You register, and you'll be assigned a rep to support you, and then they essentially, you can self-serve and request credits, especially if you're building, marketplace apps on top of AWS. And I know, Anuj, you and I had that conversation, right? Like you're incurring AWS consumption costs to experiment and build these third-party integrations for Atlassian Cloud and Government Cloud. And AWS has programs designed to help offset those consumption costs for its partners. So kind of going full circle back to my original point of not having sort of that binary partner relationship and not leveraging, the Atlassian partnership to get to AWS and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would encourage any partner to have a close partnership with both parties. And the same thing goes with Atlassian and our partner network, right? You'll be assigned a partner development representative, and he or she can get in touch with me directly. I'm no stranger. I'm not a ghost on LinkedIn, so I'm available on all forms of communication, and ultimately want our entire partner and customer base to be successful. So feel free to reach out directly.
So let me summarize. So basically, what you're saying is, if I am a marketplace partner, I can go directly register to APN and get the credits. If I'm a solution partner, when I'm partnering with some Dave and his team, I could come triangulate between Atlassian and AWS and potentially help the customer also to get some, as I said, the funding programs. That's kind of now there is what I heard also was that Carahsoft is also sort of on the Atlassian marketplace now. What is that? When do we approach that vehicle?
Yeah, so Carahsoft and us are, have a long relationship. They're our distributor of record for public sector, and with the AWS marketplace, and Anuj and I recently had a conversation on that as well. There's two different listing categories out there, and one is SaaS and the other is professional services. And I keep harping on not having this binary partner relationship, but this is an excellent way for you to differentiate your practice and have a professional services listing to migrate customers from on-premise or data center offering to AGC or even Atlassian Cloud, right? And then the customer also has the ability to purchase our software via the AWS marketplace. And there are benefits to the customer if they are an existing AWS customer. They often have spend commitments, and they can retire some of that spend commitment by purchasing commercial software off of the AWS marketplace. The professional services don't require retire commitment for them, but it's all about the speed of acquisition. We've all seen the executive orders about injecting commercial procurement terms into government, and the 17 years that I've spent in federal, I think this is the most transformative time that I've seen in terms of people actually heeding the words of those executive orders and actually taking commercial or private entities lead in how they can procure faster and adopt technologies faster. So that all kind of leads back into the value proposition of the AWS marketplace. The speed to acquisition is the fastest that I've witnessed in the public sector space, going through that channel.
I could echo that as well. What we're seeing across Atlassian SLED business is exactly that. There's sometimes where Atlassian isn't connected to the organizations themselves, and Amazon is, and vice versa. And so there have been a couple of different occasions across the U.S. where we've had the Amazon, marketplace come in quite handy, right? It helps to speed things up. They're already set up with, as a vendor, and so it makes it quite easy and seamless.
Yeah, no, we actually, in fact, as Clovity also, we did few deals actually through the marketplace, and actually that also offers additional discounts for the end customer, which is great, right? I mean, the customer benefits at the end of the day. Mm-hmm. I do want to, Dave, one thing which I'm also noticing more and more, especially is in and around, like, obviously the traditional products like Jira, Confluence, and JSM, but now there is Teamwork Collection. There is sort of that also is, how do you sort of, if a customer already has Jira, how do you suggest, like, especially in the state local space, the transition towards Teamwork Collection, and now Teamwork Graph is also sort of picking up steam? Where do you see that journey going from a customer perspective?
Yeah, it's based, again, on customer need, right? Do they have a challenge that they're faced with that they think that we can help, solution, and engage us early and often to try to help find that out, much like a doctor would with a patient. Got to get the prescription, right? So in that note, it's kind of like, we got to figure out where the problem or challenge lies. We work towards solutioning it. What we're seeing as trends across the U.S., across state and local government and higher education, is that, yes, people know Atlassian as, sometimes I walk into a room and they're like, "You work for who?" I'm like, "Atlassian." And they're like, and I'm like, "Jira and Confluence?" Like, "Oh, I know Jira and Confluence. You guys make Jira and Confluence?" So yeah, we do make Jira and Confluence. We also have a solution now called Jira Service Management for your service delivery needs. But what we're doing is making it easier on the customer, right? Because historically we've had all these different disparate solutions. We're trying to bring it all together now for a true system of work, right? Having all of your tech stack in one place, and we're starting to bucket it by collections. Yeah. So you mentioned Teamwork Collection. What that is, it's a combination of Jira, Confluence, Loom, which is our video recording, capability, and AI is built into that in our cloud products. And so those things coupled together, what we call the Teamwork Collection. We have Strategy Collection, which is really for leadership to align work that their teams are doing to their top level goals. So we're doing things like that, right? Bucketing it by collection to make it more relevant to industry, but even more so relevant to specific role, et cetera.
Yeah, so I just want to add a fun anecdote here. Actually, internally, we loved the word collection, but what we did was we took a page out of the Atlassian book and we launched something called Atlassian Unified Demo, which is actually a sort of a combination of the entire ecosystem connected from Jira, Confluence, JSM, assets, Loom, everything together. And I mean, again, a lot of times the problem is the customers want everything, but then the perception is there's too many products, right? But then when you give them a unified view, like you said, the collection view, and we call it Atlassian Unified Demo, they love it because they technically see everything on one screen, but it's all connected, right? I mean, that's kind of where the amalgamation comes in.
Anuj, I have a question for you. Actually, I know you guys have developed some third-party plugins for our cloud platform. How are you determining, need and demand for those efforts as you guys develop those plugins?
Wow, that's actually a very, very good question. Look, I'll tell you what. I think there are around 6,000 odd plugins on cloud currently. And Atlassian obviously recently launched Atlassian Government Cloud. There are about 75 marketplace plugins on that. Personally, if you ask me, this space is ready to get disrupted because one, over time, what has happened is so many plugins got built. Obviously, a lot of them were inspired from a data center perspective, but as Rovo got launched, a lot of the functionality also now is incorporated in Rovo, right? So I would say 50% of the plugins are candidly, the feature set can be done within Atlassian products with the power of AI. So to answer your specific question, one thing which we have been focusing a lot on is what are the use cases which Rovo doesn't deliver, right? So when it comes to cloud specifically, because look, AI is going to do bulk of the functionality. So our number one goal is to look at the apps which are there in data center but not in cloud. Number two, apps which can be powered in now or future with Rovo. And the ones which can't be is where we are focusing on. And third, obviously, like I said, and Atlassian Government Cloud is very new and it's on the state-of-art Forge platform. And not many marketplace providers don't sort of still have graduated to the Forge, right? So we are focusing a lot on sort of going to the Government Cloud and sort of building any app there because it's open right now. There are only 75 apps. And candidly, we have launched 5. In less than a month, we are getting downloads straight away because obviously the options are less. So that's kind of how any partner out there should look at, or any marketplace partner should look at.
Talk to me about, when we say data center to cloud migration, lots of folks think overwhelming, complex, takes a long time. There's a lot to it, right? It's not a simple, easy task. Can you talk to me, being a partner, great partner of Atlassian's, what you've seen in the field and with our customer base, what does that journey look like?
So first of all, say we try to make it simple for the customer. So that's kind of, the starting point is simple now. One, when we sit with the customer, the journey is like, to understand their data center footprint. So when I say footprint, number one, what all products do they have? Whether they have Jira, Confluence, JSM, and obviously then going into the marketplace plugins. Then the second thing is what is the depth of the license footprint they have? What is the user base? Because that's any change, the user base has to be controlled because any change, no matter simple, complex, the key is it has to be very seamless or flawless when you're moving the base, okay? Because there are 2,000 Jira project management users, you don't want any disruption. Mm-hmm. Second aspect of it is how much level of customization they have done or automations they have done within that current implementation, right? So what we do is we sort of go through an assessment, and an assessment, depending on the complexity, could be of anything from 2 weeks to 6 weeks, right? And the outcome of the assessment is actually almost giving them a multi-phase roadmap, right? And when I say multi-phase, if it's a smaller footprint customer, you basically look at that and you can do it a single big bang migration, right? And Atlassian actually has tools which they offer, which is called JCMA and CCMA, right? And what that does is, honestly, 60-70% of the migration is a straight up migration, but then there's a 30% is where the complexity starts. And when I say complexity, you start to look at these customizations, right? And those are like, let's say if they have done 500 automations, right? So you got to make sure those automations are moved as is. And that's what you're gauging the level of effort during the assessment phase. And you're sort of planning it that way. From what we have seen, candidly, if you think about anything under 1,000 users, 6 months is sort of the max you can take. Doesn't matter the level of customization they have. But mind you, if they have, let's say, Bitbucket, that's where things can get very complex, because now they have DevOps pipelines and those kind of things, and that definitely need a little bit more time, because obviously they have built their whole cadence. That can add a little more of timeline, but generally the migration path is pretty seamless when it comes to non-DevOps, and you sort of do there is, as I said, 70% goes straight in, and then 30% is pretty much where a lot of manual effort is required, sort of custom migration is required. And the good news is, which we are seeing with a lot of customers, as soon as they hit cloud from data center, that's the aha moment they get. Because not only because the feature set is so rich, also because now they don't have to worry about the infrastructure, about the labor cost, about the security patching, all of the things which they had to worry about, which doesn't exist in cloud, because now it's self-managed, right? Or they're really focused on the core function of sort of leveraging the features and keep enhancing the product.
Yeah, it gives the customer the ability to focus solely on their business.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know what brought that question. Are you seeing something in SLED where you're seeing a lot of like the customization is the key, or how are you seeing that?
Great question. Yeah, across SLED, so state and local government education, both segments, US wide, we get on calls and it's a resounding theme. Our migration will be extremely complex. We've reached a level of customization that just wouldn't be able to work in cloud. And the third component, lots of times it comes up, is just we don't have the time or resources, right? So those three things are kind of themes that we're seeing. And, of course, we're working with great partners like Clovity to try to help get around those things and help the customer, get around the mental hump of, we can help from a time perspective. We can help from a customization perspective. So I guess I'd launch it back over to you. Are you seeing some of the same?
Yes, no, definitely. See, the good news in all this is, which is sort of, again, kudos to you guys, the product you have built. The penetration is so deep. I mean, if the customer is using it more and more, that's kind of what we love, right? I mean, it's a great journey, because now from cloud premium they go to enterprise, and then I know their future roadmap is pretty great. So that's we keep graduating the customer. But yes, no, we are sort of seeing the similar problems, and now with AI, a lot of things, the migration is getting simpler by the day, and with more and more experience under the belt, right? That also is adding a lot of value, because now there are tools which we have built, the migration tools, which can help you doing some seamless migrations.
When you do these assessments, are you finding that a lot of those third-party plugins and apps can essentially be eliminated now with like the higher functionality that's available in our cloud products?
Most definitely. That's what I was sort of alluding earlier. Because cloud is so feature rich, some of the apps which were very data center centric, right, don't need to exist. So honestly, almost, I can give you a ratio also. Almost 30% of the apps gets wiped out.
Wow.
Sort of, if the customer has 10 apps, at least 3 goes away with cloud. So customer saves dollars there as well, not just on the infrastructure cost. Like I said, that's another cost saving the customer gets out of this thing, which is great. And then, as I said, they can actually invest those dollars into some other things as well.
Yeah.
How do you, again, might go back to the sort of the Atlassian AWS question, but if the move to the cloud is ultimately beneficial for AWS as well, right?
Definitely. So I probably should have mentioned earlier in the conversation that our cloud products are built exclusively on AWS. And our AGC product is as well. Our future roadmap is slated to be built on the more secure AWS Government Cloud regions, and even, forward looking into some of the higher classification levels, right? So the infrastructure that our state and local education customers and federal government customers are so used to hosting their most critical workloads on is what the Atlassian Cloud product suite is hosted on as well, right? So there's a level of comfort there for our customers, given that many of them have been AWS customers for over a decade. So Atlassian is as well. So there's a lot of parity there. And with third-party partner plugins. There's even seamless integrations with some of the managed services that AWS offers, like Amazon Connect and JSM. So there's a lot of opportunity there as well for additional use cases for partners like Clovity to build those third-party plugins to AWS managed services. And the AWS reps love a good co-selling story that benefits the customer and also increases consumption up for both parties.
And that's a good point, because we're really leaning into that too. We're seeing it take shape where Atlassian and Amazon have announced an all-out partnership, and it makes it very easy on the customer base, because they know the tech stack here, but they have a contract, and so it makes it really easy. It rounds out the engagement between both parties, and then we have our partner ecosystem like Clovity come in, helping with the migration path and things like that. It really makes it seamless for the customer.
I think the good news in all this is the reinforcement to the customer. Like there is Atlassian great products. It's built on a great infrastructure, and that's kind of the reinforcement customer always wants. On this note, we'll wrap up here. Again, for anything related to state and local, Dave and his team is there. And then for anything around Atlassian AWS, Brendan is there. And for anything around migration, solution partnership, solution consulting is where Clovity comes in. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you.